Even as an MIT undergrad, she was a bit of a legend. She's somebody who has kind of almost unnatural ability to think creatively about big technology problems.
Those of us who love science and math should also do service through innovation and invention to make the world a better place. And I use technology to do that, to try to innovate.
Google's, it was incredible. I remember it's definitely fly the plane and build the plane at the same time. I joined when we were about 1,200 people. So I love working on fun, heroic, high-impact projects with my colleagues that bring art and ideas together with technology.
Generations of girls are going to grow up with her as an example of how far you can go, what you can achieve.
And I'm here with Megan Smith, the Chief Technical Officer for the White House.
I think Megan is adding a new face to it, and she's bringing in folks who weren't always at the table when we talked about technology and the importance of it.
The greatest thing that I could do is unlock talent to really get more talented people, more surface area of people who are passionate about solving key problems.
We're on a path that's unstoppable, and you guys and we, the techies, are a big part of that. I think that one of the big things that we just have to keep doing is keep demanding and pushing. You know, that's how all change happens. And I'm hopeful because I think that the tech industry could move the fastest. So let's work together to bring everyone along and to bring the technology that we know how to solve problems with.
Hi again. I met Megan Smith a long time ago. I was working for Equality California. I was a baby gay. There weren't a lot of role models growing up for me. And meeting Megan early on was incredible. And then when I started Lesbians Tech, I asked her to speak. And she not only said, she was at Google X at the time, and she not only said yes, but she was the first person here that morning at the first summit. She was in her red puffy jacket, and she stayed till the very end. She was one of the last people to leave, her and her two boys. And I didn't know Megan well at the time, we've been closer now, but that's who Megan Smith is. She shows up, and she stays, and she's present, and she connects. There will be lines of people waiting to talk to her, and she listens. She writes down ideas, and she remembers them later. It's a brilliant thing to watch. A few years ago, I asked her to speak again, and luckily she said yes. This time it was at the White House, and we were doing an LGBTQ tech conference. It was our first one. She was at X at the time, and it was actually there that she got recruited to be our third Chief Technology Officer of the United States. What do you think about that? We had a lesbian as the third Chief Technology Officer of the United States. I've already seen the impact of that in so many places, people having that role model. It's everything. So without further ado, I would love to introduce third Chief Technology Officer, an entrepreneur, an engineer, and CTO at large, Megan Smith.
Thank you. Hi, people. It's amazing to be with you guys, my people. Hello. It's amazing to be with you guys. Should I switch my? This is also our neighborhood. Our boys were born here in San Francisco, and we live just up the street. And so it's nice to be home in the Castro Theater. Years ago, we launched Popcorn Q in the beginning of Planet Out here. So I always feel at home, and I definitely feel at home with all of you guys. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about what we call the Digital 44. And some of the Digital 44 are now continuing in government. Some of the Digital 44 are sort of at large, doing many different things. But what we mean by that is the digital tech teams that began with President Obama, 44, in the beginning of the campaign time in data sciences and all that work, and all the way through both terms, and now some continuing and some out, and I call it supernova, all over trying to impact things. And so I have two extraordinary colleagues here who are co-founders of many pieces of what we put together in government. But the first thing I really want to start it with today, because it's such a complicated time right now, I feel like I always think about something that Dennis McDonough said. Dennis McDonough is President Obama's chief of staff, the third one also, and he always would say, there is no other meeting, you're in the meeting. And I like to always feel that way whenever we are all doing work, because things really do start from anyone starting them, any team and anything we begin. And so I want you guys to feel the agency that you really do have and that we have in this world, and how if we team up, we can make the things that need to happen in the world transpire and happen. So there's a quick slide that I want to show you. We had the sadness of losing Jake Brewer, who was an extraordinary colleague. He was killed in a bike accident raising money for cancer. He worked on Dreamers. He worked on connectivity. He worked on getting people to work. He worked on data, you name it. He was part of the digital sort of everything that all of us work together on solving problems. And he used to carry around this pledge, and he got us all to start reading it and thinking about it. And I love this pledge, and I wanted to share it with you guys this morning because, especially in this second part, I pledge to serve and to push my country when right, to be kept right, when wrong, to be set right. Wherever my ancestors and I were born, I claim America, and I pledge to live like a citizen. And I feel like it's a time for really noting those two feelings, where it's right and where it's wrong. And we're part of that arc. And so with that, I want to bring up my two extraordinary colleagues, Vivian Graubard and Hartley, who are creators of many of the different pieces that we do. And we're going to talk about the architecture of that. So come on up, guys. Oh, we lost Hillary. You're good?
Vacation brain.
Here we go. I almost tripped too. It's hard. It's really hard to see right there. All right, so we created a lot of different teams within the government together, and it's definitely a team sport. Vivian was actually on the CTO team before I joined, and the beginning of this, we call it the Digital 44, really came off of the campaign. When people come off of the campaign, there's all these seats for everyone, and there really wasn't a seat for the digital techies, and that's why President Obama and the campaign teams advising him created the US CTO job. It's in the Office of Science Technology Policy that advises the president in the White House, part of the West Wing teams and Eisenhower Executive Office building teams. That group, it's in the Office of Science Technology Policy because science and tech are about 100 people who are advising on everything from NASA policy and working with those agencies to climate change and energy policy to science, STEM, security tech. And so there wasn't a digital techie person at a principal level, just the science advisor. So they added the CTO, and Anish started and focused a lot on policy pieces, things like net neutrality and encryption and other topics, open data, really advanced that. And then when Todd came, Vivian, talk a little bit about that time, because that's when you guys really turned your attention to add, in addition to policy, we call it TQ, like IQ and EQ, TQ tech skills in the policy room for tech policy or even rural child poverty or another topic having tech involved, but capacity building the government based on what you saw and what became Presidential Innovation Fellows, which is how Hillary came in. So
yeah, that's right. Is this on?
You pull it a little bit down, it's up.
The easiest part. Hello, hello, good?
Okay, good.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So, when I joined the Office of Science and Technology Policy in 2012, there was this outstanding question about the role that tech and implementation of technology might play in policy. And so we had just, we had seen the power of data and tech throughout the campaign. The president was fully bought in. The West Wing senior advisors sort of understood it, but there was a question about exactly how it would work and what we should be doing. And so along with a few key advisors, Todd Park and our team created the Presidential Innovation Fellows program. And at first, the first round was 18 people from across the country who signed up to come and figure it out. It was the first time that that we had committed to taking people with these technical skills and putting them into agencies and saying, see what you can do, capacity build. You have the executive leadership and sponsorship from the top of the agency. We have a sense of what the largest problems are where you might be able to help, but really it is your mission to sort of wander through the hallways of these agencies and see where you can be the most helpful, because we will continue learning. That will be our benchmark. Like Megan said, Anish really focused on policy, on net neutrality, on broadband, and then the second question was, okay, now that we sort of have made the argument for why tech is necessary, how do we begin to apply it? And so we are now in what round of the Presidential Innovation Fellows program?
Fifth round. 20 PIFs are about, we call them PIFs, Presidential Innovation Fellows. They come from all over. They're front end, back end, user interface designers. And Hillary, you answered this call. So.
Yeah, I joined in 2013. It was the second class of Innovation Fellows. And they had worked out a few of the kinks from that first year, but the idea really was to find folks from industry to come in and solve problems that were saving lives, saving money, and creating efficiencies all over throughout a lot of different government agencies. Some folks were working on a project called Blue Button, which is essentially enabling you to get your own health information and be able to take it from provider to provider to provider. It's an open data and an API. The interesting thing about Blue Button is that now there are lots of buttons. There's a green button, there's a gold button. So this idea of really kind of being able to grab your own data, have open data, sort of took off. So now there's a green button, which is for energy. If you pay a PG&E bill, you can actually surf their site and go down your green button data, download your green button data. So a lot of things kind of came out of even just that one project in that first year that is continuing to kind of build on top of each other.
And it was extraordinary. A lot, I think the way you might translate it into the tech community, you think about the entrepreneurs in residence who are in VC. So this is the same kind of idea, only embedded in government with a rotation like Peace Corps or White House Fellows. It's a one-year program. And so you guys, now there's been 5+ classes, over 100 PIFs doing amazing things. And then some things started to happen where people got the bug to stay. And the whole time this was happening, this capacity building and getting into government and people realizing, wow, I want more people like that, so could you please stay? The CTO team continued not only capacity building, but also the policy, the TQ policy, so lots of open data, 200,000 data sets, hackathons, other things. So talk a little bit about why did 18F happen?
It was a confluence of things. It was, honestly, some of us weren't quite finished, both literally with our projects, but also kind of just with this feeling of our time in government and our time to be contributing in that way. And then also, I think, there was this, it was percolating inside the agency where 18F lives, which is called the General Services Administration. And this idea, Todd had seeded it, the commissioner of that agency had kind of started to think about how could we build a team in-house to sort of start thinking about these long-term projects. PIFs were coming in for 6 to 12 months and then leaving, and sometimes leaving these projects, honestly, to sort of flail and peter out because there wasn't anyone to carry them on, and the administrator really didn't want that to happen. So it was kind of a confluence of the leadership having this idea of wanting this team to exist, and then a bunch of us wanting to stay, but also having our own spin on what it should be, and kind of having 6 months under our belt of really working with stakeholders and with leaders in other agencies and saying, we think that this could work. We think that this idea of being a consultancy, of really working for and with other agencies and with other program managers and with other career people would have the sort of greatest long-term effect.
And now it's grown. There's over 200 people in the kind of tech transformation service, which is in the central group in government, for those who don't know, that General Services Administration, who pays attention to all the buildings and all the agencies, pays attention to central pieces, now has this tech transformation service that includes your team. Some here in San Francisco, the PIFs
and another innovation group.
People who run like data.gov and cloud.gov and those common services. So just give a couple examples of things you're working on, maybe the child welfare one. And for people to know, federal IT spend is $80 billion. Right now, 80% of that is going to just maintaining stuff that's very old. So getting in there and fixing this is important. And these guys discovered a second amount of money, $60 billion, that goes granted into the states, and how we could look at not making 50 versions of something, but using open source. Okay.
Yeah, so we've worked mostly with federal agencies. We're building something called Cloud.gov, which is a little bit like Heroku, but allows developers across the federal government to kind of spin up applications online using the cloud. We're building another system called Login.gov. So we're kind of taking this platform look in addition to some of the awesome consulting work. I think Leah Bannon's here. She's been working with the Federal Election Commission for the last couple of years, doing amazing work with the FEC. But so we've got this platform view, but then also a really big focus of ours is kind of the mantra that the government just doesn't make good decisions about how to spend money on technology. And so we are also doing a lot of consulting around procurement and how the government buys things. And again, elevating that TQ, the tech quotient of folks around these people making the decisions and being fed information about what they need to buy, et cetera. And so we've been able to kind of also take that to the state level over the last year. There's a caveat there that program has to be receiving federal money, but if it is, we can engage, and we had the great privilege of working with the state of California on the child welfare system. They are building a new system. They're procuring it from scratch. We have a really long and awesome blog post that was written with our partners in California at 18f.gsa.gov, which tells the whole story. But in short, the secretary there made a decision. She wanted something to be different. They had this procurement in the works, an RFP, a request for proposal.
Yeah, let's get into the specifics. They did a 1,500-page RFP for $500 million.
They've been working on it for 7 years.
That would ship in 5 years from one single vendor, central source, and lots of subcontractors.
Well, they've been just working
totally
on the
proprietary.
RFP for 7
years. And now,
years.
for $75K of consulting, it is $150 million.
We wrote a 70-page RFP, and it's going to. The dollar amount isn't really as great as the effect of what it's had in California, because our mantra is not just open source code, but kind of this open source mentality. And so the RFP, having those documents out in the open, having those processes out in the open, blogging about it all along the way. Now we've seen Ohio, we've seen Mississippi, we've seen several other states kind of take that reference information and do their own thing as well.
Yeah, so now it's 10 different shipping moments and lots of really good stuff, much less cost, and now we can share across. So Vivian, you guys were in the middle of lots of policy work, PIP's working, 18F is coming, we're making change, and Healthcare.gov happened.
Healthcare.gov happens, which many of you are perhaps familiar with. So the website is set to launch, so that the policy can take effect, so people can go online and shop for health insurance like they're buying a plane ticket on Kayak.
And then
it doesn't work. So we rapidly worked to recruit engineers from some of the top tech companies in the country, led by Mikey Dickerson and Todd Park, to try and figure out how we're going to get ourselves out of this hole. And so it was really the third phase of, okay, how can engineers, designers, product managers, sort of like technically oriented people begin to really shape policy and the work that the government is doing? Because it was the first time that we had a test case for, oh no, this thing went down, and now we need people from the outside, not because they're smarter, not because they're better, but because they have a different set of experiences, because they've worked at these really large tech companies and have had to do these types of things before, come in and apply their skill sets, not just to fix the problem, but to bring their agency, kindred spirits along with them to teach them how to also fix these problems, like Megan said, in essence, capacity building. And so with that, we were able to gain the support of the president and of various agencies and of Congress, actually, both sides of the aisle, to invest in building the United States Digital Service, which launched in August of 2014. And when I left in September, we had over 200 people that we had recruited, which really stands to the fact, and a testament to the fact that people want to do this kind of work. When we were launching the PIF program, we didn't know if anybody would answer our call and apply. And over the course of 3 days, we had over 800 applications. And it has sort of been like this every single time that we put out the call and say, you have a very specific skill set, and you can come and solve a problem that may not seem sexy on its face, but is absolutely critical, like the child welfare system, like improving our immigration benefits, like making sure that our veterans are able to access health care and the benefits that they receive, that they deserve. People will answer that call. And it's amazing every single time.
So we're basically out of time, but what Vivian's talking about is this ability to take these huge budgets. There's nobody who has more money than the governments. Take these huge budgets and really upgrade them. And it's not a new thing. President Lincoln and those before had the Pony Express, and they had to upgrade to the telegraph. We've got to think like that, right? We've got to get to the next wave. And the new way of doing things is very inexpensive, very collaborative, very open, sharing-based, and it is a very cross-functional way to do it. And TQ needs to be at all the tables, including in government. And you guys built extraordinary teams. Hundreds of Americans now work from, Amazon, Facebook, Google, Twitter, Dropbox in the federal government. We have a chair that's been added by President Obama, and the current leadership plans to continue and accelerate, and it's not partisan. So we hope, are here to say, we hope all of you will take a minute sometime in your career to serve your country, either full-time, part-time, or through API and open data, and whether it's tribal, whether it's state, local, or federal, because the governments are just whoever shows up. Yep. And so we need to show up for this and change and include at the level that you guys have. And I just thank you guys so much for your extraordinary leadership.
Thank you.